Therefore, to summarize, we can say that from our initial conclusion that the soul was female and that the spirit was male and that the soul had gained predominance over human events, we can draw two more conclusions. Number one is the fact that when the soul is in control, it does things that don't seem important to it or relevant, but which are very relevant and important to the spirit. Things that the soul may consider minor or ignorable are very important to the spirit, as in the case of when Adam took that fruit and submitted himself to the voice of the soul, in other words, the woman. And we can also see how little things that seem irrelevant to the soul can have such catastrophic consequences in human affairs because of that taking of one little fruit, because of listening to the voice of the soul. A curse came upon all humanity. And the same happens with entire nations. Some people may say, well, what is wrong with nations bowing before statues or worshiping animals or doing these little things that seem irrelevant? But all these things have consequences. They bring spiritual damnation, spiritual death. The same thing happens not only in pagan places in India and Africa, it happens in the church when believers start rejecting certain words from God that God sends through His prophetic voice or through His Spirit into their souls, and they reject that word, and that brings destruction of their spiritual calling, and it brings consequences in the natural, and you see tornadoes and different things, and you wonder, why did God allow this to happen? Well, there were many spiritual decisions that were being made by the soul along the way that led to this thing. Things that the soul saw as minor. Oh, that doesn't harm anybody. If I do this, that's no harm. But God sees it as very relevant because He sees it from the Spirit's perspective, because the soul of man is very different from the rest of the souls. We see it in Latin America, for example, where corruption is so endemic, and even Christians steal and cheat and do unrighteous things, but then they go to church as if nothing had happened, and then they have these bad governments and this poverty and this perennial underdevelopment, and no one knows why, because they have the resources to be developed and prosperous, but they keep being cursed. They are under this damnation that they never get out of, because they continually do these little things in the soul that the soul finds irrelevant, but which are very important to the Spirit of God. And if you don't deal with those soul issues at the root, those little attitudes that are supported by the culture, you can bring in all the social programs that you want, and you can bring the UN, you can bring the US with all of its money, and you can have another stimulus package for all of Latin America or for many nations around the world, and they will never move forward, because the issue is not one of money. It's an issue of little decisions in the soul that have to be attacked and destroyed in order for true change to come. So that is the second conclusion that we can reach, that when the soul is in control, it does little things that can be very destructive, spiritually speaking, and that bring consequences that the soul does not understand. And the third conclusion that we can also see is that when we operate in the soul, we risk losing our spiritual calling, and we can have an eternal loss even if we don't go to literal hell, as happened to the robber, the thief, who admitted that Jesus was the Son of God as he was dying. Jesus' bones were not broken. His spiritual calling was not broken, because he lived a life of total submission of the spirit to the soul. And had the first Adam done that, had he been able to not to allow the soul to perish without obeying it, then he would not have fallen, and he would have been the Jesus for his Eve. In other words, he would have been the one called by God to pay the price so that his wife could be restored and have a chance of eternal life with him. But he said, no, I love her too much. He was too attached to her because she was so special to him, and he decided to go down with her, because as 1 Timothy declares, Adam did not go down unknowingly. He was not deceived, it says in 1 Timothy. Eve was deceived by the serpent. The woman was deceived, but Adam wasn't. Adam knew what he was getting into, and he did it anyway because he loved her too much. Instead of allowing her to experience full death in isolation from him, and then to accept the calling from God to die for her, instead of all of that, he chose to go down with her as well. And that's not what Jesus did at Calvary. He allowed his soul to be poured out to the ground and to be lost as long as the spiritual calling was not broken. And because of that, he is the Redeemer of humanity, because he has come to enable us to operate in the fullness of the Spirit. And as long as the churches in America and the UK and around the world continue to operate in the soul, they are wasting away the precious sacrifice of Christ, because he did not come just to get us out of hell so that we can live a happy life in paradise. That's not the reason why he came. He came so that we could manifest the fullness of the Spirit nature of God. And that is when our salvation is complete. When we can manifest that, then we can say we have truly been saved. And as long as we are satisfied with crumbs, as long as we're satisfied with just getting out of eternal damnation, then we will be an abomination to God in the latter day when we stand before him, because he will say, "Depart from me, I did not know you," because you were never willing to surrender or submit your soul fully to me.